Hello, welcome to my channel, and it has been a while since I last posted a video, and I thought, this is a good time for me to resume posting. So, what's up? How are you all doing? I'm doing great, thanks for asking. Okay, so yeah, basically what has happened for the past few months was that I started my second semester of my studies, and basically things were kind of busy for me. I've had tons of work to do for my masters, and so the thing is, I think I sort of committed a bit of faux pas when it comes to time management at that time, because I sort of got caught up with the amount of work that I had to do, that I somewhat neglected to assign some of my time towards pleasurable activities such as reading for pleasure. And as a result, I ended up not reading very much, at least for pleasure. But I did read a lot for assignments, and honestly, I don't think I would want to review those stuff here. I've reviewed those stuff in my assignments. Anyway, but now that my second semester is done and I'm officially in my semester break period, I thought, well, it's a good time to sort of reevaluate how I did, how I performed with my time management. And I thought, for my next semester, maybe I could do better. So we'll see how that will look like. But in the meantime, because it's already the break, I have more time. I have resumed with reading for fun, and now I have things to talk about. In fact, even before that, I've had things to talk about, because I read 2 books at the end of February, and also one awesome book in March. But I didn't get to talk about those books because, I was on my hiatus for the past few months. So I think this video will just be something really casual. I mean, all of my videos are casual, but this video is going to be just, really relaxed. It will be like some sort of catch-up recent reads. I also have read 2 more books after the end of my semester, and I will probably talk about those 2 books and maybe one more book that I am going to finish soon in a different video. So in the meantime, I'll be talking about the books that I read before I stop uploading. So yeah, the first book that I read was a buddy read with a friend from Instagram. His name is Marilyn, and we read We the Survivors by Tash Aw. And Tash Aw is a Malaysian author. This is the second book that I've tried. The second book of his that I've tried. So the first one was The Harmony Silk Factory, which I did not finish because I didn't really enjoy certain bits of that book at the time. But I'm open to explore more of his works, and this just happened to be like one of the books that I had, and Brian was interested in reading this, and we decided to just sort of have a casual buddy read. And it was so casual to the extent that he actually finished this book first, and I have not even started reading this book. So how would you categorize something as a buddy read? I mean, YMMV, but I suppose, for me that counts, because we did have some discussions about this book afterwards. But anyway, talking about this book, this is kind of an interesting book because it was this book is about a Malaysian Chinese man. His name is Ahok, and what's interesting about him is that he was imprisoned some years before the present time of this book because he murdered a foreign worker. And as you may expect, this book is going to explore why he committed that murder. And at the same time, as you read this book, you'll find that this book also explores Ahok's history, his past, his childhood, and from there offers insight on his motivation, or at least the series of events that led towards him committing this murder. So this book explores a lot of themes concerning the effects of your socioeconomic background on how you live your life at the current moment. I find that the theme of worth, the worth of an individual, the worth of a person is definitely something that is really big in this book, because it dissects how worth is associated with your socioeconomic background, the wealth or the lack of wealth that is associated with your origin, and how those sort of intersect with your race, your skin color, your nationality, or even, if you stretch it a little bit, your place of origin, where your ancestry was from. So all of those things are tied nicely in this book. How those intersectionalities sort of plays off with each other, the conflicts between different groups of classes in Malaysian society. And I think this book does a great job of really highlighting the dynamics that happen between all of the, or at least most of the socioeconomic groups, the rich versus the poor. But not just that, it also tells stories about how the poor versus the poorer, or the rich versus the richer. But it focuses more on the characters with of lower socioeconomic background. So that aspect, I think this book does really well, especially when it comes to bringing the nuance of Malaysian society. And in that sense, this book is quite a success. The one thing that didn't really vibe well with me with this book is that some parts in this book would feel kind of heavy-handed to me, especially when it comes to how the story would highlight its messaging, messaging related to all the aforementioned social justice issues. Sometimes it felt repetitive. Sometimes it felt like it is trying to over-explain things, or over-highlight things, or overexpose certain things that you could understand from just hints, right? And so the subtlety that I think is really needed when it comes to discussing certain topics or subjects in a story is kind of lost. And I personally, as a reader, I prefer something that could deliver some kind of ideas or messages in a more subtle way, which I think would help a lot in giving the story flavor without really obstructing the flow of the story. And when it gets a little bit too heavy-handed, the story feels a little bit clunky sometimes, you know. So that was my experience reading this book in terms of its narrative flow, because sometimes the narrative would feel a little bit congested with ideas, with messaging, right? You know, certain things that are really obvious to you, but it's you know, it is shown very clearly to you, and it just felt kind of awkward. So yeah, that was my thoughts about We the Survivors. So the next book I read was how could I forget the title? Celestial Bodies by Jokha Alharthi, who is an Omani writer, and this book was originally written in Arabic and was translated into English by Marilyn. So this book, thing is, I had this vibe before I read this book. I had this vibe that I was going to like this book. Not just like, I was going to love this book. But as it turned out, I didn't, which was really disappointing. And from the description of this book, what the description said was that this book was going to be about something like a family epic, family epic / domestic fiction of sorts, with a bit of historical fiction elements added into it, about this family who lives in Oman, and the timeline of this story spans from, if I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong because it has been a while and I don't have the book with me now, probably from middle of 20th century all the way to current times, and how Oman and its society and its politics sort of change over that period of time. But at the same time, this book also focuses on this particular family, and within this particular family, it focuses on its the three daughters. So basically, all these three daughters have some kind of stories of their own related to their respective relationships and marriages. And that was like my impression, like not impression, but that was like my expectation of the book, that it was going to focus a lot on these sisters. But at the same, but when I read this book, and after I read a few chapters of it, it was actually much deeper than that, which was, you know, to be honest, was great. Not that I would mind if the novel would just focus on these three sisters, but I thought it was, you know, for a fairly thin book, it was like 200-ish pages. It explored a lot more than just these three sisters. It also explored the character of the husband of one of the sisters, the father of the husband, and I think the father of the three sisters as well, and some kind of possible, you know, relationship that I wouldn't want to get too deeply in this video because it might be spoilery, that involves the father of these three sisters, and also the mother figure of the husband of the mentioned husband of one of the sisters. So a lot of the characters in this book receive highlights, and so all these characters have their stories being told, delivered to us, and it's really intriguing way. And at the same time, what I thought was quite interesting about this book also was that, just now I mentioned about how this book spans a long time, and in a sort of subtle way, okay? Like, unlike the first book I talked about, there is this subtlety in how it shows changes in Oman's society and politics and also economy, weird stress, economy, and in a way that sort of makes Oman, the setting, feels like a character of its own, which I think is quite interesting. Yeah. So this book is a lot of things. It's a lot of things, and despite having like only 200 plus pages. So yeah, these were the interesting things I had about this book. I felt about this book. But this book, I'm not sure whether it's because of like the original writing style, or maybe it's because of the style of the translation, or what. It felt monotonous to me. The prose just felt so a bit bland. There were reviews that said that the language used in this book were poetic, and I just didn't get the that poeticness of this book. So I was wondering, maybe it was like okay, I was wondering maybe it was me and not the book, or maybe I just didn't find the style of the book appealing, which is, I think both could be correct. But if it's the former case, like if it's because of me, like I'm just wondering how to enjoy this book. But in any case, I think it's pretty valid that I didn't enjoy this book also. But yeah, I just didn't really get how the more beautiful aspect of the writing, because I thought it was kind of monotonous. We are served with stories from of all the characters that I've mentioned, and we also see how they sort of play off with each other as characters, and the dynamics between all these different characters, right? And that should be really intriguing, right? But all of these characters, their stories are delivered by a third-person narrator in this kind of impartial way, sort of objective, not very emotional, and the tone for that is used to deliver all these individual characters' stories are just kind of uniform, and I just couldn't find this my interest just wasn't latched onto this book. I couldn't find an emotional point to which I could tether my my attention, or my soul to this book, because I was just not feeling the characters. I could objectively read that all these characters have their own conflicts and difficulties, the issues that they have, but I just could not feel these characters, and that was the problem that I have with this book. It was just dry for me. So yeah, that was just my experience of this book. I know that a lot of my friends enjoyed this book, and if you love this book, yeah, tell me what was your experience with this, and if you felt similarly about this book as I did, please share that as well. So yeah, those were the two books that I read at the end of February. Now, on to the third book, which was an awesome book. It was Valley of the Dolls by Jacqueline Susann. And when I started reading this book, I wasn't sure if I was going to like this book. I wasn't sure how I would feel about this book. And maybe it was also because at that time I was just starting a new semester, and so I just wanted to have something a little bit, I wouldn't say light. This book wasn't really light. It was like 500 pages long, and the topic itself is, the subject matter is not particularly light as well. It's not like a funny, happy little book. But the language used to convey the story is accessible enough that I was able to read this book fairly quickly. Now, on top of that, this book also had this story that was really gripping. So basically, it's about these three women who find themselves in showbiz, and I think this book took place sometime in the 40s or 60s. Oh my gosh, I can't remember. I might have to include this information in the description box below. Just to confirm that the time at which the story takes place. I think the story took place sometime in the 40s, because this book was published in the 60s, so it was probably around 30s, 40s, 50s, and yeah, so this book is about these three women, and one of the women, her name is Anne, and Anne is probably like the more important character in this book. She comes from a fairly, I would say, well-to-do family, but she's forced to sort of marry a man who lives in the same town as hers, and she doesn't want that. She wants to live her life freely, to love freely, and so she decides to go to New York against her mom's wishes, and work as a secretary. And it is there that she finds herself into this situation where she gets to know people who work at in the showbiz industry. She is acquainted with another woman who wants to make it big in showbiz. Well, not just one woman, but two women who would become her friends, Neely and Jennifer. And both of these women also have their own motivation in achieving whatever their ambitions are in the book. So we see how being in showbiz at that time affect these women, and I really like how this book just takes the story and develop the plots of these characters in a way that feels well paced. If I were to comment on one really good thing about this book, it would be the pacing. I like the pacing, even though there are time skips in this novel, but the pacing of the story just feels quite organic. Some parts are a bit slow, some parts are a bit faster, but they work. They feel appropriate, and that was something that really helped me enjoy this book, and also got me turning the pages almost non-stop. So yeah, that's one thing. And another thing that I really enjoyed was that this book focused a lot on telling a story, or at least, you know, different stories of these women as a whole novel, one story. You know what I mean. But there is this really strong focus on delivering a story, and at the same time, it is also sort of deliver some kind of messages that are, I would say, somewhat feminist in nature, based on its time, right? And messages that that is subtle enough that it doesn't obstruct the flow of the story. So again, you know, comparison with the other books, or the first book in this video. But yeah, that was something that I really enjoyed in this book. I mean, that's one thing. And another thing that I particularly liked was how dramatic this book is. I mean, I like things that are dramatic once in a while. Certain things that are a bit over the top. I mean, you get things like cat fights in this book, which is, yeah, awesome, right? And you know, it's just things that I really like, and also the ending of this book is, you know what? I like that ending. I've also seen the ending of the movie for this book, and you know, I just didn't really like the movie version's ending. You know, I think that the ending of the book is much stronger. But obviously, I'm not going to share with you what it is, but it really provides this really a lot of reallys. It provides this really strong punch to the entire novel. Like when you finish reading this novel, the ending just gets to you, or at least it got to me. Like I was like, oh, so this is how it ends. Okay. But yeah, overall, Valley of the Dolls was a very entertaining read, but at the same time, it felt quite intelligent as well. It felt like it had some things to say, but at the same time, it was able to really focus on delivering a good story. So that was something that I really liked about that book. Yeah. Anyway, those were all of the books that I wanted to talk about in this video, and I think it's already like half an hour long. And I am also going to sleep soon. By the way, I'm not sure if I've mentioned this already. My hair is just, you know, I just had my shower, and I did not do anything with my hair. Like I did not brush it after the shower. I just leave it like that. So maybe that's why it's a little bit messy. I also didn't shave. Anyway, yeah, and you could see I have a fan behind me. Yep. And I also have a fan in front of me, so you would see, you know, my hair having a bit of action sometimes, you know, like now. But yeah, that's a little bit silly. But yeah, that's all for this video, and I will return with book talks of the books that I have finished, and also one more book that I am going to finish soon, so I'm quite excited about that. And I'll see you in a new video. So until then, take care. Thanks for watching. Bye.